Hi. I learned a few things about polishing copper that I never knew before, and I thought I'd like to pass them on to you. Look at this piece of copper. You can see it's pretty dull. What I did was cut this out of a piece of copper pipe, and I cut it into 1 foot lengths, and then I shaped it, and then I ground it down on the grinder over there, and got it to this place, and then I said, boy, I've got to polish this. How am I going to do this? Well, here's what I learned. The first thing you want to do to start polishing it is to start with a fine block of sanding block. And you see it's starting to shine up already? All that oxide's starting to come off of there. Okay? And I won't bore you by doing the whole thing, but you can see it's already taken that off. Make sure you do it on both sides of it. Okay, like that. So then once you get this polished, then you switch over and you clamp this thing down like I have it here. And I put a little piece of foam underneath it so I won't scratch it. Okay? Then what I did is I took a regular angle grinder and I put a buffing wheel on it. You get several different kinds of buffing wheels. Some of them have multiple stitches, some are a little harder, and some are a little soft. This is a relatively soft one. But you see the black around here? This is from a substance called Tripoli, and Tripoli is an abrasive compound. So what you do is you start it up, and I'm going to start it up briefly so you see it. And then you hold the block of Tripoli like this, and let it rub while it's running. Let it rub right on there. And then come over here. So this is called Tripoli. You can buy it at a hardware store. It costs me about $5. And you can see where I put the buffing wheel in it to get some of this stuff on the wheel. Now you might want to use a regular 1/4 inch drill with a buffing wheel. The problem is it doesn't go fast enough. And a grinding wheel gets that speed and it will melt the Tripoli onto the bristles. So then you put that on there and you come over here and you put your wheel so that it's going like this. Something I learned is when you're buffing, you go from the center out so that this thing doesn't catch the edge of the metal as you're polishing. So use the Tripoli, put it on there. You don't need very much. If it isn't polishing enough on here, add a little bit more, but you don't usually need a lot. I would highly recommend you get yourself a pair of safety glasses because this will throw some material out, and also ear protectors because you're going to be doing this for a long time, and a pair of gloves. And if you say, well, oh, I don't need that. Let me tell you, it's when you're not expecting it that something flies out. Like to make this smooth like this, I had to take this over to my bench grinder. And that's a stone wheel flying around, and it will kick pieces of metal. And if you don't have your goggles on, you're asking for it. You might want to consider putting a respirator on if you're worried about breathing the ground up dust from this. Anyway, so with that in mind, let me show you. Here, I'll take this with us so you can see what this looks like. Okay, okay, so we're over here, and this is what this looks like. It's not very pretty right now, but let me show you what it can look like. This is after it gets polished. Do you see? It's unbelievable. It almost looks like jewelry. And that's done with just Tripoli. I tried using another buffing compound, which was actually jeweler's rouge, and it didn't cut or polish as much as the Tripoli does. So you start with that and you end up with this. One final thing, the way I got this was to take a copper pipe and cut it in, as I told you earlier, into a 1 foot section, and then you take your cutoff wheel and you cut down one slice all the way down to the bottom. Once you got that slice in the tube, you take a torch and you heat up that tube. until it's cherry red and quickly dip it into cold water. And if you'll notice, before you heat it up, you can't get that thing to open. But once you heat it up and stick it in the cold water, it does a process called annealing and allows you to open it up, and you can shape it how you want. Okay, I thought you would like to see this and like to learn a little bit more about polishing copper. This was my first time of being so successful. I should be holding up the good one, shouldn't I? Being so successful with polishing this, and this is going to turn into a 10-bladed windmill. It's going to go into our yard.